In the summer of 1940, Britain's greatest weapon was invisible. No, not radar. No, not Enigma. Not even Churchill's speeches. Britain's secret weapon was the people nobody counted as warriors at all. The Luftwaffe bombed RAF factories. They photographed the damage. They wrote assessment reports. And they reached their conclusion. But they were looking at the wrong factories. The real factory was a motorcar plant. Castle Bromwich, just north of Birmingham. And the people inside were housewives, secretaries, shopkeepers. Most of them hadn't held a hammer 6 weeks earlier. And these women won the deadliest air battle in history without ever leaving the ground. This is their story. The story Britain forgot to tell. It started with a walk through factory gates. The 17th of June 1940, early morning. The sky was grey, threatening rain. A woman, 28 years old, stood outside the main entrance to Castle Bromwich. She'd taken 2 buses to get here. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, from fear. She'd never been inside a factory before, never worked with metal, never used tools heavier than kitchen knives. But the poster had been clear. Women of Britain come into the factories, and her husband was in France.
Or had been.
She didn't know anymore. The telegram hadn't arrived yet, but she knew. Wives always knew. The gates opened. She walked through. The smell hit her first. Oil, metal shavings, something acrid that caught in her throat.
Then the sound.
Machines running. Already. At 6 in the morning. The noise was constant, low, mechanical, like the factory itself was breathing. A foreman approached, looked her up and down.
You're here for work.
Yes, done factory work before.
No.
He nodded, as if he'd expected that answer.
Most haven't. You'll learn.
Come with me. He led her through massive doors into the main assembly hall, and she stopped. Just stopped, because the space was enormous. Bigger than any building she'd ever been inside. Bigger than the cathedral. Bigger than the railway station. And everywhere there was metal. Sheets of it. Stacks of it. Curved pieces that looked like nothing she recognized. And men. Hundreds of men. Moving between machines. Carrying components. Shouting instructions over the noise. The foreman kept walking. She followed. Her shoes clicked on the concrete floor. Nobody looked at her. Everyone was too busy. They reached a section near the back. Smaller machines. Tables with tools laid out. A few women were already there. 5 or 6.
Looking as lost as she felt.
This is riveting, the foreman said. You'll learn to set rivets in wing panels. Each panel needs 2,400 rivets. Each rivet must be perfect. If one fails, the wing fails. If the wing fails, the pilot dies. Understand? She nodded. Your trainer will be here in 10 minutes. Don't touch anything until he arrives. He left. She stood there.
Looked at the tools on the table.
Hammers, strange curved implements she couldn't name. Boxes of small metal pins. Rivets. She picked one up. It was cold. Heavier than it looked. Another woman came and stood beside her. Younger. Maybe 19. Have you done this before? The girl asked.
No. You. No.
I was a secretary. In the city center. I was a housewife. They both looked at the tools. Neither spoke. What was there to say? The trainer arrived. A man in his 50s, hands scarred and call-used. He didn't smile, just started explaining. This is a rivet gun. This is how you hold it. This is the angle. This is the pressure. This is what happens if you get it wrong. He demonstrated. Placed a rivet. Positioned the gun. Positioned the gun. Struck once. The rivet set perfectly. Flush with the metal. Your turn. The woman picked up the gun. It was heavier than it looked.
Your.
She positioned it.
Your.
Struck. The rivet bent. Again. She tried. It bent differently.
Then.
Third time.
You're thinking too much.
Just feel it. The metal will tell you when it's right. How could metal tell you anything? But she tried again. And again. And again. By the end of the first hour, her hands ached. By the end of the second, They were numb. By the end of 12 hours, she couldn't feel them at all. But she'd set 47 rivets. 47 that passed inspection. The trainer had "You'll do." She took the bus home. It was dark. Her dress smelled of oil. Her hands were black. She couldn't wash it off completely. The oil had soaked into her skin, into the creases of her palms, under her nails. She looked at her reflection in the bus window, didn't recognize herself. The next morning at 6, she was back. Meanwhile, across the channel, Hermann Göring was having breakfast. It was a beautiful morning in France. The chateau he'd requisitioned had excellent kitchens. The coffee was French. The pastries were French. The victory was German. He spread a map across the table, studied it while he ate. The English Channel, such a small stretch of water, 21 miles at the narrowest point. You could almost see England from Calais on a clear day. And soon, very soon, they'd cross it. His chief of intelligence entered. Brought the morning reports. Göring read while he drank his coffee. British aircraft production status. Minimal. Herr Reichsmarschall. Southampton factory severely damaged. Estimated output 50 to 80 aircraft monthly. Insufficient to replace combat losses. Göring smiled. And how many are they losing? Current estimates suggest 200 to 250 monthly. So they're dying faster than they can replace themselves. Correct, sir. Excellent. Continue the pressure. 4 more weeks and they'll have nothing left. He turned back to his breakfast. The war would be over by autumn. He was certain. He was wrong. But he wouldn't know that for months. Because nobody had told him about Birmingham. Nobody had told him about the women. Nobody had told him that in a factory marked motor vehicles on German maps, something impossible was beginning. Back in Castle Bromwich, the 28-year-old woman was learning. Her name doesn't matter. It was never recorded. But her hands matter. But her hands built. By the end of her first week, she could set 150 rivets per day. By the end of her second week, 300. By the end of her first month, 600. The male workers who'd grumbled about women in the factory stopped grumbling. Because she was faster than most of them. But it wasn't just speed. It was precision. Every rivet she set was perfect. The inspectors started to recognize her work. Could tell which panels she'd done just by looking. That's hers, they'd say. Pass it through. She never knew this. Never knew the inspectors trusted her work above others. She just kept working. Other women arrived. Every week. More. By July, there were 400 women in the factory. By August, 800. By September, over 1,000. They came from everywhere. From Birmingham, obviously. But also from Wolverhampton, Coventry, even as far as Leicester. They took trains, took buses, walked if they had to. One woman, 19 years old, had been a shop girl, sold ribbons and buttons in a haberdashery. She'd never imagined doing anything else. Then the war came. Then the men left. Then the poster appeared. She's in the ranks too. She applied, was accepted, was assigned to wing panel assembly. The first time she saw a Spitfire wing up close, she couldn't believe something so beautiful could be made of metal. It was curved, elegant. The way it tapered from thick to thin, the way the light moved across the aluminium, it looked alive. Stop staring, her supervisor said. Start building. The wings were constructed in sections. Each section was a panel. Each panel was a framework of metal ribs covered with aluminium skin, and that skin had to be attached with rivets. Thousands of them. Each one precisely positioned. Each one set at exactly the right depth. Too shallow, it would come loose in flight. Too deep, it would weaken the metal. Either way, the wing would fail, and the pilot would die. She learned quickly. Had to. There was no time for slow learning. The REVF was losing pilots faster than they could train them, losing aircraft faster than they could replace them. Every day counted. Every hour counted. Her first day, she completed 8 panels. All were rejected. The rivets were wrong. Spacing incorrect. Depth inconsistent. She wanted to cry. Didn't. Just started again. Second day. 12 panels. 6 passed inspection. Third day. 15 panels. 12 passed. By the end of her first week, she was producing 25 panels daily.
All of them perfect.
By the end of her first month, 40 panels daily. The male record was 35. Nobody said anything, but everyone knew. The foreman approached her one afternoon. "What's your name?" "You don't need my name."
Yes.
"There's a bonus system. Extra pay for high output." "I don't want extra pay." "Why not?" She looked at him. "Just keep count. That's all I need." The count. He kept count. By August, she was producing 85 panels daily. By September 120. She became a ghost in the factory. Nobody knew her name, but everyone knew her work. One day in September, a pilot visited the factory. Squadron leader from 19 Squadron. He'd been shot down over Kent, bailed out, minor injuries. While his squadron rested, he came to see where his aircraft came from. They showed him the assembly line. Showed him a Spitfire being built. He walked around it slowly, ran his hand along a wing, looked at the rivets. They were perfect. Absolutely perfect. Each one identical. Each one flush with the metal.
Who built this?
He asked. A woman. He looked surprised. A woman. Yes, sir. We have over 1,000 now. The pilot nodded slowly. Kept looking at the wing. Tell her something for me. What's that, sir? Tell her I'll fly this aircraft tomorrow. Tell her my life depends on her rivets. And tell her I trust them completely. They told her. She nodded. Said nothing. Just went back to work. But that night, for the first time since starting at the factory, she smiled on the bus ride home. Another woman was older, 55, grandmother of 3. Her son was in the army, North Africa. Her daughter's husband was Navy, North Atlantic. She had knitting needles at home that hadn't been touched in months. What was the point of knitting when you could build Spitfires? They assigned her to electrical systems. The Spitfire's wiring was complex. Hundreds of connections, each one critical. Radio systems, gun systems, engine controls, navigation lights. One error and everything failed. Her first week was humiliating. Her hands shook. Her eyes weren't good. Even with spectacles, the small wires blurred together. She made mistakes. 3 aircraft had to be rewired because of her error. The supervisor called her in. "This might not be suitable work for you. Give me another week. You're making too many errors."
Oh, one more week.
"Please," he sighed.
1 week.
"Then we'll reassess." She went home that night and cried for the first time since her husband had died 5 years earlier. Cried because she was failing. Cried because boys were dying and she couldn't help them. The next morning, she came in early. Before her shift started, asked another woman, younger, with good eyes, to teach her tricks. "How do you tell which wire is which? How do you remember the connections? Are there patterns?" The younger woman showed her. "Look, the insulation colors follow a code. Red is always power. Black is always ground.
Oh.
Blue is radio. Green is navigation. Once you know the code, you don't need to see the small markings. Show me again." They spent an hour before the shift started, then another hour during lunch. By the end of the week, the older woman wasn't making errors. By the end of the second week, she was faster than the younger woman who'd taught her. By October, she was the most reliable electrical worker in the factory.
0 defects.
0. The quality inspectors stopped checking her work, just signed it off. If she'd wired it, it was correct. She never told anyone, but she'd developed a system.
Oh.
Every time she completed an aircraft, she said a prayer, not a long prayer, just one sentence.
Oh.
"Keep the boy who flies this safe." Then she moved to the next one. By the end of the war, she'd wired 2,847 Spitfires, said the prayer 2,847 times. She didn't know if it helped, but she liked to think it did. The women developed their own culture, their own codes, their own ways of surviving. If someone's hands were shaking from exhaustion, another would quietly take over for 10 minutes. No words necessary, just a touch on the shoulder, a nod, 10 minutes rest, then back to work. The supervisors never noticed, or if they did, they pretended not to. If someone received a telegram, the others would know immediately. You could see it in her face, the way she stood, the way she stopped moving, and without speaking, The women nearest to her would cover her work while she sat in the toilet block and cried. 15 minutes, sometimes 20. Then she'd come back, eyes red, hands steady. Back to the line. They never spoke about the telegrams. What was there to say? Every woman there was waiting for what? Or had already received one. Or would receive one tomorrow. They did speak about other things, quietly during breaks, about children, about rationing, about ways to make a little meat stretch across a week, about how to patch clothes when there was no money for new ones, about which shops still had stockings, about which cinemas were still showing films, normal things, human things, because if you only thought about the war, you'd go mad. One woman brought knitting to her breaks, made socks for soldiers, another brought a book, read during lunch, poetry, Wordsworth, Keats. She said it helped her remember there was beauty in the world. Another woman drew, had a small notebook, sketched the other women while they worked. Quick drawings, just outlines, but they captured something. The concentration, the tiredness, the stubborn determination. Nobody asked to see the drawings, but sometimes when the artist wasn't looking, others would glance at the notebook, and they'd see themselves, really see themselves, not as they looked in mirrors, but as they were, and it mattered. To be seen, to be recorded, to know that someone had noticed. In early July, the numbers started to change. June had produced 10 Spitfires from Castle Bromwich. 10, after 2 years of construction, after millions of pounds, after all the promises and delays. Just 10, but they were 10 perfect aircraft, and they flew, and they fought, and some of them survived. July produced 23, more than double. The engineers couldn't quite believe it. The workforce was still learning. The production line was still being refined. Everything should have been slower, but it wasn't. The women were accelerating, learning faster than anyone had predicted, developing shortcuts that didn't compromise quality, finding efficiencies that the engineers had missed. One woman discovered that if you slightly warmed the metal before riveting, it was easier to work. The metal was more pliable, the rivets set better. She showed others. Word spread. Production speed increased 8%, just from warming the metal. Another woman reorganized the rivet trays, put them in a different order, saved 30 seconds per panel. 30 seconds doesn't sound significant, but multiply it by 120 panels per day. By 200 women. By 30 days, that's 6,000 saved minutes, 100 hours, 4 full days of production, from 30 seconds. The engineers started watching the women, not to criticize, to learn. These women, who'd never worked in factories before, were solving problems the engineers hadn't even noticed. Meanwhile in France, German intelligence officers were writing reports. British aircraft production assessment, Southampton Supermarine Factory confirmed destroyed in recent raids. Secondary production facilities identified at Hawker locations. Estimated combined monthly output 50 minute alpha +50 minute 250 monthly. RAF fighter strength declining rapidly. Projected collapse 6 to 8 weeks. The reports went up the chain, reached Göring's desk. He read them.
Alls.
Wrote in
Van the margin.
Excellent. Continue pressure. The reports were wrong. Completely wrong. But how could German intelligence know? They were watching Southampton. They were watching the Hawker factory. They were tracking every known aircraft production facility. But nobody was watching Birmingham, because Birmingham built motorcars. Everyone knew that. August came. The Battle of Britain moved into its desperate phase. Every day the Luftwaffe launched massive raids. Every day RAF fighters rose to meet them. Every day aircraft fell from the sky. British and German, but mostly German. The German pilots couldn't understand it. They'd been told the RAF was finished, down to its last squadrons, its last aircraft. One more push and it would collapse. But it wasn't collapsing. If anything, the British seemed to be getting stronger. An Oberleutnant named Klaus Müller flew a Messerschmitt 109 with Jagdgeschwader 52. Excellent pilot. 14 confirmed kills. He wrote to his wife regularly. The letters from August reveal his confusion. August 10th. We have been told the British have fewer than 100 Spitfires remaining. Today I encountered at least 20. They fought well. Where are they finding pilots? Where are they finding aircraft? August 17th. Shot down a Spitfire today over Kent. It was brand new. I could tell from the paint. Not a scratch on it except what my guns put there. Brand new. How is this possible? We destroyed their factory. Intelligence confirmed it. August 24th. I no longer believe the intelligence reports. Today we faced more Spitfires than last week. They are not running out. If anything, they have more. Something is wrong with our assessment. August 29th. I fear we cannot win this. Not if the British can replace their losses faster than we can inflict them. My squadron has lost 11 pilots this month. 11. We are being ground down. His letters stopped in September.
Alls.
He was shot down over Sussex on September 3rd. Survived. Became a prisoner of war. Spent the rest of the war in a camp in Scotland. Back at Castle Bromwich. August production reached 37 Spitfires. Better than July. But still not enough. The factory managers knew they needed more.
50, 60, 100.
They pushed harder, added shifts, asked workers to do overtime.
Paused. Agreed.
The women especially. They knew what was happening in the skies above them.
Alls.
Some nights you could hear the fighting, the distant rumble of bombers, the sharper crack of anti-aircraft guns, the strange whistle of falling bombs. Birmingham was being raided. Not every night, but often enough. The workers knew they were targets. Everyone in the factories knew, but they kept coming. One night, early morning of August 14th, the bombs came to Castle Bromwich. Night shift was working. About 300 people in the factory.
Alls.
The air raid sirens had sounded at 11 p.m. Most ignored them. Sirens sounded every night. Usually nothing happened. This time was different. The first bombs fell at 11:17 p.m. Hit the far end of D block. The sound was enormous. Not just loud. Enormous. The kind of sound you feel in your chest. In your bones. The building shook. Someone screamed to take cover. People ran. Not in panic. Not yet. Just ran. Towards the shelters. Towards the exits. Towards anywhere that wasn't D block. More bombs fell. 6 in total.
Alls. 3. Hit D block.
2 hit the yard outside. 1 hit the railway siding. When the all clear sounded at 11:43 p.m., people emerged, slowly.
Alls.
The smoke was thick, chemical, you could taste it. And there was another smell underneath. Burning. And something worse that nobody wanted to identify.
Alls. D block. Was rubble.
Just rubble. The steel girders were twisted like wire. And there were people inside. Or had been. They found 6 bodies. Eventually. Took hours. The fire brigade came. Dug through the wreckage. Found pieces. Parts. Not whole people. Just parts. 41 others were injured. Burns. Mostly. Shrapnel wounds. Broken bones from falling debris. They were taken to hospital. Some came back. Some didn't. The morning shift arrived at 6 a.m. as usual. Walked through the gates. Stopped. Stared at D block. Or what was left of it. The bodies had been removed. But the blood hadn't. You could see it on the concrete. Dark patches. And the clothing was still there. Shoes. A gas mask. A lunch tin. All of it sodden from the fire hoses. All of it mixed with rubble and ash. Nobody spoke. What was there to say? A foreman approached the gathered workers. D block is closed. A, B and C blocks are operational. We need to continue production. I understand if any of you want to go home. Nobody will judge you. But if you can work, we need you. One by one the workers walked past the ruins of D block, walked into the operational sections, switched on the machines, started working. That day, Castle Bromwich completed 4 Spitfires. The Luftwaffe had failed to stop production. One woman who'd worked through the bombing came back the next evening. Her supervisor stopped her. You don't have to work tonight. Take time. Where else would I be? Home. With your family. My family's here. She gestured at the factory floor. The girls. The work. That's my family now. And if I go home, I'll just think about last night. See it again. Better to work. She worked her full shift. 12 hours. Never spoke about what she'd seen. Just worked. September came. The sky above southern England was a battlefield. Some days you could see the contrails from the ground, white lines crisscrossing the blue, drawing patterns, writing equations in vapor. Each line represented men trying to kill each other at 20,000 feet. Castle Bromwich produced 56 Spitfires in September, nearly double August. The women had learned, had adapted, had become something nobody expected. They'd become experts. By October, production reached 67 aircraft. By November, 71. By December, 78. Each month better than the last. By the end of 1940, Castle Bromwich had produced 354 Spitfires. 6 months earlier, they'd produced 0. In Germany, intelligence officers were baffled. Their reports weren't matching reality. British aircraft weren't declining, they were increasing. But from where? Göring demanded answers. Intelligence scrambled, reviewed all their data, checked their sources, confirmed their numbers. Yes, Southampton was damaged. Yes, other known factories were at capacity. So where were the aircraft coming from? One analyst suggested Castle Bromwich, was told not to be ridiculous. Castle Bromwich was a motorcar factory. Everyone knew that. The analyst persisted, showed reconnaissance photos, large buildings, rail connections, possible assembly hangars near the airfield. His superior dismissed it. Motorcars. It says so clearly on our maps. Focus on real targets. The analyst was right. His superior was wrong. But by the time anyone realized, it was too late. September 17, 1940, Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion. The invasion was cancelled. Not officially, not publicly, just postponed. Indefinitely. The Luftwaffe couldn't defeat the RAF, couldn't establish air superiority, couldn't guarantee safe passage for the invasion fleet. Without that guarantee, the invasion was suicide, so they postponed it. Then postponed it again. Then quietly abandoned it. The Battle of Britain continued until October 31st, official end date. Though the fighting didn't really end, just changed. Became night raids, became the Blitz, became a different kind of war. Final numbers: RAF lost 1,023 aircraft during the battle. Luftwaffe lost 1,887. But the crucial number was this: in October, the RAF was stronger than it had been in July. How? Castle Bromwich. And not just Castle Bromwich. Across Britain, dispersal factories had opened. Small workshops, garages, church halls, even hotel rooms, anywhere with space and power and people willing to work. Women were building Spitfire components everywhere. Wing ribs in a garage in Reading, fuel tanks in a workshop in Salisbury, tail sections in a disused cinema in Trowbridge, then shipping them to Castle Bromwich for final assembly. It was chaos, it was improvised, it was brilliant, and it worked. Between 1940 and 1945, Castle Bromwich produced 12,129 Spitfires, more than half of all Spitfires ever built. Peak production reached 320 aircraft monthly. In June 1944, they built 10 Spitfires per day. Per day. That's one aircraft every 2.4 hours. The workforce peaked at 12,000 people. More than half were women, and most of their names were never recorded. After the war, one woman spoke to her granddaughter in the 1950s. "What did you do in the war, grandmother?"
I worked in a factory.
"What did you make?" "Things. Metal things." "What kind of things?" "Just things, dear. Nothing special." But it was special. It was everything. Another woman kept a diary.
Never published.
Found decades later in an attic. August 1940 entry. "My hands are ruined. The skin is gone. The nails are black. I can't make a fist anymore. But today I built 95 panels. That's 95 chances for our boys to come home. So my hands can be ruined. That's fine." September entry. "Dorothy didn't come to work today. Her husband was killed over France. We all knew. Nobody said anything. Just worked harder. Did her quota too, so she wouldn't fall behind. She came back next week. Didn't say thank you. Didn't need to. We understood." October entry. They say the battle is won. They say we've saved Britain. But nobody knows who we are. The pilots get medals. The pilots get parades. We get bus fare home and hands that don't work properly anymore. Is this fair? I don't know. But I do know this. I helped. My hands helped. My rivets helped. And that's enough. It had to be enough, because that's all they got. In 1945 the war ended. The women went home. The men returned from the fronts. They reclaimed the factory jobs. The women stepped aside. No medals were issued, except rare exceptions like Lillian Silverny, who received the British Empire Medal. No monuments were erected. No speeches were given. They simply forgot, or chose to forget. The women became invisible again. But numbers don't forget. 12,129 Spitfires. Each one passed through women's hands. Each one saved pilots' lives. Each one kept Britain alive for one more day. Castle Bromwich today is a Jaguar factory. Motor cars are built there, not Spitfires. But on Chester Road, there stands a sculpture, Sentinel, a Spitfire, steel, looking skyward, erected in 2000, and beneath it, an inscription. To the men, not to the pilots, to the women, the workers, the invisible army, the heroes who won without ever flying. In the summer of 1940 Germany made a mistake. They underestimated Britain, they underestimated women, and they lost. Because wars aren't won only in the skies, they're won in factories, in workshops, in the small repeated actions of ordinary people doing extraordinary work, and in those factories, there was an invisible army. Hands hard, hearts harder, and they changed the world, quietly.